Welcome, everyone, to Evolving Together with Christine Labbé, beyond the diagnosis into a new realm of possibilities. Your child deserves to be seen, heard, valued, and celebrated exactly as they are. Hi, I'm Christine, founder of Evolve Movement, a pediatric neuromovement practitioner, conscious parenting coach, and author of Our Superpowers, celebrating differently abled kids and their siblings. I offer new insights, understanding, and expansion that empower you to support your child in a way that is aligned with their soul's potential. You are not limited to the stories you've been taught to believe. You can write your own narrative. It takes 28% of parents with a neurodiverse child to awaken and advocate for change to start seeing progress. Be the change you want to see and take the first step towards a new future. Evolving Together starts now. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Evolving Together, where we delve into the possibilities beyond your child's diagnosis. I'm your host, Christine Labbé, and today we're going to explore the power of slowing down as a way to deepen our awareness, opening us up to more conscious connections with our children. So why don't we begin with real life stories? Real live events. Many of you, like me, are either a parent to a neurodiverse child or a parent to a child that has complex health needs, or a combination of the two. And so we really know what it feels like to be in the doing, to have a lot of responsibilities. And sometimes for us, that can be very overwhelming. Now, the reason why we're talking about slowing down today is because it's such an important topic, not only for ourselves, for our own healing, for our own self-awareness, self-understanding, and self-compassion, but it's also key in learning how to create an optimal learning environment for our children to really thrive, for their learning experience to be really potent. And that's really what's important here, is that the learning experience itself be potent. Now, what are some of those core concepts that we need to think about when we're thinking about creating that environment? One of them is being present. And so how can we be present when we're always on the go? You know, part of being on the go is that our mind is also on the go. We're either thinking of what was happening in the past, or we're thinking of what's happening in the future. So thinking of what happened during the day, or thinking of what we have to do going forward. And so we're never truly present to our children. And this is really, really important for us to be here right now with our child and allow ourselves to begin to connect and attune to them. You see, connecting and attuning is another key concept that is important to talk about, because this is what really allows us to mirror back to them how wonderful and beautiful they are. This is where we get to see, hear, value, and celebrate them. And we do that with our energy in the present moment, being there with them, where our entire focus is on them. And see, this is also a core concept because it's all about creating safe space. You see, that safety is emotional safety. It's not about physical safety. It's that child feeling emotionally safe to begin to explore and discover and eventually express what that innate potential is, and feeling safe in that, feeling safe to be exactly who they are. This is the kind of environment that we want to create for our children. And, you know, the whole idea of connecting and attuning, that comes with self-awareness, right? So it really starts with the self. And that's why we're always talking about the parents in these conversations, because it really starts with the parent. So slowing down is all about beginning to feel and sense and notice things that we otherwise could not see, sense, or feel. These subtle things that become part of our awareness. It's also an opportunity for us to start feeling and sensing what's happening inside of us, feeling and sensing when what's occurring in our inner world might actually impact our children, right? So tuning into how you feel and how your child is behaving that day. And then maybe the next day trying to check in with what's going on inside, shifting your inner world and then seeing how that impacts your child's behavior. So all of this really starts with this idea of slowing down. And this is exactly what we're going to talk about today. And I'm so excited to have Judith Dack join us today, and she'll be coming on right after the break. First, I want to introduce her to you because not only is she a dear friend, but she's also a neuromovement practitioner and Feldenkrais practitioner who worked with my daughter for many, many years and was a mentor for me, someone that I learned a lot from about connecting and attuning to the children, especially in my practice while working with children. So I thought it was so important to bring her on the show because she's going to be able to share not only her personal experience, because she also has a child with a neurodiversity, but in addition, she also has over 25 years of experience working with children and families as a Annette Banyal method neuromovement practitioner, Feldenkrais practitioner, and child space practitioner. So I'm so excited to have Judith Dack join us today. Right now, we're going to take a short break, but please stay tuned. We'll be right back. Hello, everyone, and thank you. Welcome back to Evolving Together. I'm so excited to have my dear colleague and friend, Judith Dack. So here we are. Thank you for joining me today, Jude.
You're welcome, and I'm happy to be here. It's always fun to get together and have these great conversations about the kids and, how we can be of service to them and their families in more and more easy, beautiful, and powerful, potent ways.
Yes, absolutely. And today is going to be a beautiful conversation. So I thought maybe you could begin by introducing yourself, telling us a little bit about your personal story and the work that you do.
Absolutely. So, where to start? Well, I am a neuroplastician by trade, and that's just kind of a groovy word. I've actually never said it like that before, but it's kind of fun. But I work with children that um, are here with us and maybe have different ways of experiencing the world, different ways of experiencing themselves. Um, And I have been doing that for a very long time, like over 30 years. And the way in which that I work with children is I have been informed by several wonderful methodologies. I'm a long-standing Feldenkrais practitioner from the beginning of the 90s. And I am a long-standing Annette Banyal method for children practitioner for a long, long time. I'm also a practitioner in child space, and I'm also a Pilates instructor, and I've also done a lot of esoteric healing trainings. And I have practices in Toronto and Vancouver and Europe, and I'd love to be doing workshops with parents and with my younger colleagues, mentoring them so that they can also upgrade their skills and their understanding and their practice. So that's kind of like what I do. How I got into all of this is because quite a number of years ago, I had a daughter, and my daughter ended up, well, she actually, the truth of it is she was vaccinated, a childhood vaccination, and it didn't really work well for her. She had a really big reaction to that, to the vaccine. And in about, I would say maybe 3 to 6 months, she stopped walking and she presented with inflammation in her pericardium. and had like inflammation everywhere in her body and was in a lot of pain. So she was rushed to hospital, and we were at our hospital in Toronto, Sick Children's, and we were there for 3 months before they diagnosed her with what do you want to call it? Disability, or a condition, or a situation that still goes on till this day. However, my daughter has really learned so much in how to navigate the way that this world is, which is not an easy world when you have difficulties. I mean, it's not an easy world in so many levels. And that's another thing, we don't even really see that, because we are so habituated to our own body and to our own way we navigate through the world, that we kind of sometimes pretend that we understand what it's like for somebody who, doesn't move as well or as quickly or as easily, or doesn't respond or think as quickly, or is able to express themselves as easily. It's hard for us because that's not the way it is for us. It's like that old indigenous saying, until you've walked a mile in somebody else's moccasins, you really don't know what they experience. So it's interesting in that regard. But so I have a child that's had a lot of, and she's a young woman now, obviously, but she's had lots of, challenges. And it's always so amazing for me, because I remember when she was first in hospital, and I felt myself going down this rabbit hole, down, 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 down. And I remember getting more and more bummed out, and more sad, and more depressed. And that went on and I had this like sort of like lightning shaped crack in my head that was like this headache that would never go away. It was just awful. And after about 3 weeks of that, I sort of looked at myself and said, Jude, you've gone about as far as you can go. You've reached the bottom. And there's nowhere to go now but up. And so interestingly, what happened to me at first was that I got angry. And it was like, great, because the anger moved me. I was able, because in fear, you can't move. You become paralyzed. You just can't move, you know? But in anger, you can move. You can start to say, okay, I'm going to take things into my own hands. I'm going to find out what her disease process even means, and back then, I don't even know if I had a computer. Like, I'm sorry to say, I went to the library, and there was one book on my daughter's condition, one little red book that I picked up and took home and started to study. And, it was that like, I'm going to do something. I'm going to make a difference. I'm going to like see what can happen here. That anger that got me moving. And I was very grateful for that. And I was grateful too later on for even falling down the drain a little bit, because it showed me that when you fall down the drain and you come face to face with what's down there, it's really yours. It has nothing to do with your child. It has nothing to do with your child. It has everything to do it had everything to do with me, And so that opportunity to just see that, turn around and see those demons and look them in the face and find the only next little thing that I could grab onto, which was getting angry for a little while and getting up that, that rabbit hole and pulling myself out of it and getting going, getting into action, getting educated, and starting to, sort of understand or feel or whatever. So that's kind of how it all started for me. And, after a long time at Sick Kids, we left. But that was really that's, as we all know as parents, that's never the end. That's just the beginning, you know. But I think the last thing that I would say about that is that I think in some ways the most important thing that happened for me when I, was walking beside my daughter was that I think at first I really, I really wanted to kind of rescue her. I wanted to save her. I wanted to, make it better for her. I wanted to, that's who I was. First I was the fear, then I was the anger, then I was the like wanting to rescue and wanting to save her. And then that went on for a little while, but then I remember the day when I realized, and it took a lot of courage. It took a lot of courage, Christine, to realize that I could not save her and I could not rescue her, but I could walk beside her and I could do everything possible that I could do to make her journey a little easier. And that shifted me so much. That was a huge part of my healing because it gave me so much more room to move. It gave me so much more freedom. It gave me so much more permission, you know, for my own creativity, for my own ability to help, for my own ability to serve, for my own ability to teach her. And that was really, I think, the real opening for me, where things really began to open up. Yeah.
It's interesting what you share because it's like your intention shifts now, right? It's more this space of empowering rather than saving. And so that looks so different in terms of the environment that we create for our children, right? And the models that we are, and the safe space that we raise them in. When we're empowering, it looks so different than when we're saving. So I thought maybe you could talk a little bit about what that environment looks like when you're trying to create an environment where your child will begin to explore and discover what that innate potential is.
I think the thing that first comes to my mind when you ask that question, you know, parents and their children are so much more deeply connected, I think, than we really even realize, because there's so much that we don't see. There's so much that that is veiled from us, really, that we don't really see. And so I think that for me, allowing myself to go through that process enabled me to start to create environments for my daughter that would move her forward, that would open her up to all that she could be, and I think that is something that is elusive. Like, I sometimes, I mean, I work with parents and children, all the time, all day long, every day, except now I take off weekends, which is good. But it's like, it's not just about the child. That's the thing. So if you have an exceptional child, guess what? You get to become an exceptional parent. And I think that is a big part of this journey. And I think that, being older and being on this path for a long time, it's kind of like there's a saying, you know, when you've earned the right to talk about something. So that's why I feel, you know, that I can talk about it. Because one thing is that I do it all day long, but two, because that's how it is. Like the more a parent can learn to see and learn to feel in clearer and deeper ways, the more actually becomes possible for our children.
Yes, you know, everything you say is completely aligned with a lot of the messages that I share about this correlation between the parent and their healing and their growth and expansion, and the child's development and the child's ability to really step into whatever that potential is. So I think that's really great that you bring that up because it's impossible. You know, when we think of creating an environment for a child to know themselves, and I know you and I have talked about this many times before, we can't create an environment for a child to know themselves and to really begin to understand what they have to share with the world if we don't even know who we are, which oftentimes we don't know. We're not even connected to ourselves enough to be able to connect deeply with our children. Do you want to speak a little bit on this
Well,
topic?
that's really true. And you know, the issue too is it's such a gorgeous, beautiful world. And at the same time, it's not a world that's really conducive to knowing yourself. It's not a world that's going to support you to really know yourself and to really even understand what knowing yourself looks like. I mean, does knowing myself mean that, you know, like I like this, but I don't like that? Is that what knowing myself is? Or is knowing myself knowing that I am the potential of all that is? I am the potential of so much. You know what I'm saying? Like I am the potential of compassion. I'm the potential of intelligence. I'm the potential of service. I'm the potential of, unconditional love. It's not just knowing yourself like, well, my favorite color is turquoise and I really don't like, whatever this. It's so I don't think it's like we use a lot of cliches, but do we really take the time to deconstruct things and look at them in our own selves to really determine what that would look like or what that could look like for us? So I think it's I mean it's a topic that has to be talked about, but I also think that it's a lot it's a lot bigger than we realize. And to understand that knowing yourself will allow you to serve the same process in your child and in your child and my child, it's very important that they begin to know themselves for so many reasons. To understand, to maybe, I mean, on so many levels, it can be to know themselves, to be able to say in some way that they don't want water, or they want to sleep, or they're hungry, or they don't feel well, or they have so much love to give, or they appreciate the fact that you understand them or are trying to understand them. I mean, it's huge. So it's very big. It's a very big conversation. But don't feel stressed about like, I have to know myself before I can, help my child, because it's not black and white like that either. It's not black and white like that. Love is the most important thing. It always has been, it always is, it always will be. That's just how it is down here. But being down here is not always easy because it's not a world that supports that kind of expression. And because of that, we protect ourselves, we defend ourselves, we just try to get along the best we can. we just try to negotiate the obstacles, instead of really reveling in the gift that we are, that we have this chance to be here on this earth, that there is joy within us, there is love within us, there is possibility within us, there's consciousness, so I think it's important when we start a conversation like this to acknowledge that it's not particularly easy. There's not a lot of, where we are developing support systems. When I was first with all of this situation with my daughter, I mean, there wasn't any, I didn't know anybody. I didn't have any friend that had a child with difficulties or any Facebook groups or any, I mean, nothing, so one can feel very alone, because it is a very unique experience to be the lover of a child that has challenges. It's a very unique experience. And the quality of what you are able to give, like there's a lot of demand on us parents when we have children with challenges. There's a tremendous amount of demand. And I mean, that brings up a whole other conversation about how do we navigate that and how do we care for ourselves through that, because that's a whole other thing, because our only models in that are all of the martyrs that we, have known throughout history, you kind of feel like that, like, but anyway, that's a different conversation. So I just want to say that there's a lot of permission, I think, that parents need to give themselves to begin to walk on this path and to know that it's not a straight path and it's not a path without bumps in the road. And, we will bump into those obstacles and we will fall down and we will get overtired and we will get short with our partner and we will get, all those things will happen. All those things will happen. And we'll get tired of driving our child to every therapy known to man. All those things will happen. And we have to understand that it will be that way as we are learning how to navigate this path. It really, really will. It really, really will, and how to be, oh my gosh, so many things. There's so much to say, really. But if we get back to the question that you asked me, which is about beginning to understand that there is a type of environment that could, benefit our children. And maybe we don't even really know what that looks like, but we kind of have an idea just because we see our child in daycare with screaming and yelling and kids all over the place. And then we see our child, maybe not doing very well in that environment. So sometimes we learn that there may be a better environment just by watching our child, waiting at the hospital to see the doctor for 2.5 hours. And we think to ourselves, I wonder if the next time I book an appointment, I could book it for 8 in the morning and my child would be the first one, because my child doesn't really do very well at the hospital in the cold because it's cold here and they have to wait for 1.5 hours or 2 hours to see the doctor. I remember one time at Sick Kids, I waited for 6 hours to see the hematologist. 6 hours, So we learn that way. And that's why I'm saying there needs to be a lot of permission on our part for ourselves, because we have a lot to learn. We have a lot to learn because we don't know what that environment is that we want to facilitate. We just know that there's got to be a better one than the one that we're now facing, So I think when we begin to learn, perhaps by the environments that are not really giving our child life, we can start to think about, well, what could an environment look like that would bring more life and love and aliveness to my child? So I think that's how we kind of get to it often, is by what's not really working. And I think that when we get there, that's a great place to be, because then we can kind of really sit down and think about it and talk to our partners about that. And some of the things that for me that I have really understood is a lot of the kind of elusive, obvious things. They're obvious, but they're elusive because our world doesn't really support them. So in a way, there's a place inside of us that we know these things, but we don't have time to really know them because they're not supported by this world, so they become elusive. For instance, quieter environments. And quieter environments can happen just by talking more slowly. Can you notice that as I slow down my speaking, your ears grow? Your ears are now growing towards me. They're growing to listen. But it's elusive. It's obvious, but it's elusive.
You know, when you work with the children, you talk of these things that can be subtle at times, but when we have this ability to really connect and attune to a child, and I know you do this very well, working with all the children that you see, you begin to really feel what it is that they need, right? It's almost like for you, it's just something that you know. It is an inner knowing, it is clear, and you're able to create that environment for the child, for them to feel safe in your presence, for it to be a potent learning experience. And so I think it would be nice to speak a little bit about that and how parents can start to understand how one can begin to learn how to connect and attune to their own children so that they can really begin to support them in the way that they need it the most.
Absolutely. And I think, that's where I was going. But I wanted to just sort of pave that first piece, because we can sometimes give up there, in that first couple of steps. But I think we could call it a knowing, Christine, but we could also call it a way of being. And I think when we call it a way of being, it gives us more access. So you are right. For me, it's a snap of a finger, and I can shift into that way of being. And I think that parents can learn how to do that. But there are things that can help parents to shift into a different way of being. So one of the first things is slowing down. And we've talked about this at great length. And the reality is we are not slow. I mean, sometimes I become present to how I'm brushing my teeth, and I'm just like, wow, Jude, you know, the whole world is waiting for you to finish brushing your teeth, so you better go a little faster. You know what I mean? So it's like distinguishing slowing down. So a distinction is something that you know as something different from something else. So the process of a new way of being is in distinguishing something. And so to distinguish slowing down is the way to start to provide an environment for your child that could be gorgeous and could be full of learning and could be full of love and could be full of safety and could be full of richness and meaning for your child. But slowing down is probably the first thing to learn to distinguish. And a distinction has to be taken on by me if I want to learn to use it. And then what happens is when I take on a distinction, like slowing down, and I learn it, then I can be used by the distinction. And
You're going
that's,
to elaborate on that one.
yeah, it's a little deep, but it's like now for me, I am used by the distinction slowing down. It is a way of being for me so ingrained in my neural network that I just move there. Like I'm just used by it. It just comes and I'm there. And parents can learn that. Parents can learn that. And that is great for every child, by the way. Not just our children that, you know, have a lot to contend with in this world and a lot to learn and a lot to figure out. But all children love it when it's a little slower, even though they'll try to convince you that they really want it fast. which I have had a lot of fun with too, learning to distinguish fast and slow for children, because some children just like to move fast all the time. And so distinguishing for them what they're doing, have them become present to how fast they're really going. And once they really get that they're really moving fast, you can then distinguish slow and medium. It's very, very interesting. But I would say really that slowing down is the big first context that is really worth your while to learn. And you learn it by starting to explore it. That's how any baby starts to learn something, is by exploration. Any child learns something is by exploration. So if you can understand why slowing down is so important for your child, one, because maybe they don't process as quickly. Two, they don't move very quickly. I mean, they don't even maybe take their food quickly. They don't drink quickly. They don't think quickly. They don't move quickly. So if you want to have a conversation with another person's brain about learning, the best way is to slow down. Because in slowing down, when you slow down, you can actually receive, see, feel that child in a way that perhaps you never have. And when you start to see that it actually takes them this long, then you can start playing with the timing and the rhythm of how they move, how they think, how they respond to you. And once you've got that piece, you can really start to teach them. You can really, you know what, be with them. You can really be with them. Now, does that mean, well, are you saying, Jude, that I always have to talk like this? No, that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying allow yourself to explore what it means to be, slowing down, what it means to slow down, and be curious about what that allows you to be, how that allows you to show up, and then how that influences how your child shows up for you, and then how that influences what you see and how you respond to your child. One distinction, I did talk about the ears growing when I was talking slower, but the first distinction for me is always slowing down. It is a distinction, and you need to distinguish it for yourself such that you can use it as a way of being. And there's so many miracles that come just from that first distinction.
Yes, because it's linked to so many other parts. Because when you speak of slowing down and how you're able to connect with the child and see them and really feel them and all of those things, we're really talking about being present, being here and now, meeting a child where they are. And you speak about being with the child, and to me, that speaks very much about being in the process of learning, whereas a lot of us are already thinking of the future, already thinking about the outcome, already thinking about the goal or what we're doing things for, rather than simply being present and being
Or,
with the
yeah,
child.
or what we're going to make for dinner, or what we're going to wear tomorrow, or like, why
Right.
did that person say that stupid thing to me, and like, I just don't even like that person, and on 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 it goes. But our children are not really living there.
Mhm.
They're not living there. So if they're not living there and they're actually doing their best to survive in the present is where we need to be. And the second thing that really becomes possible when you slow down and move into the present moment is that you find new ways to connect with your child. And there's nothing really more meaningful, I think, for a parent than really being able to connect to your child. I mean, there's our children don't, perhaps some of our children will never say, I love you. Perhaps some of our children will never say, Mommy, Dad. You know, I mean, we need to learn how to connect with our children. And then when we do start to learn to connect, we see that all of that is right there. We start to find that connection with our child because we adopt a way of being which is distinguished as, first of all, slower, and then slower than that. And inside of that, the listening on both sides, the listening of your child and the listening of you, gets more and more potent. And your child is able to learn you in a new way, as you are able to learn your child in a new way. And from that comes the ability to learn how to connect. And there's nothing more meaningful for us as parents or for a child to be able to really feel that they have been seen, that they have been heard, that they have been understood. And there's nothing more meaningful for a parent than to feel like they have connected with their beloved. Nothing more meaningful than that. So the slow is a big distinction, but it really opens up the door for a lot of other distinctions that come after that, you know?
Yeah, and thank you for mentioning, because a lot of parents are attached to the wanting to hear their child say, I love you, or wanting their child to do things that they would have expected them to do, or things that are expected of a neurotypical child. And they're attached to these things. But the truth is, as you say, just because they don't say, I love you with words, doesn't mean they don't say it with their eyes, doesn't mean they don't say it with their energy, doesn't mean they don't say it in so many ways, but we can't attune to them and feel that unless, as you say, we slow down. So thank you so much for mentioning all of this today, Jude, because, slowing down is really the number one thing. And when we slow down, we begin to feel so much even within ourselves that we didn't even know was there, right? Many things that may also need healing. And this kind of connects to the beginning of our conversation when we talked about knowing ourselves, getting to know, understand ourselves on a deeper level, understand our own beliefs, our own conditioning, and how all these things really influence how we view the world.
I mean, it's a stretch, but one could almost, at some point on the journey, on the path, begin to look at this whole situation very differently. One could actually begin to say, how much I have learned in being a human being, from being a mother to my child or a father to my child, I mean, for me, that is very, very real for me. Very, very real for me, that I have been really graced by this opportunity to walk this path with my daughter. And it has completely transformed me, changed me, into, a better human being, really. That may be a little further down the path, but it's just an interesting thought, It's an interesting.
I'm right there with you, and I speak of this a lot. And a lot of parents are not going to be ready to hear that message. And that's okay because it is a process.
It is okay.
I think it offers parents hope. It offers them that hope that there really is this beautiful space at the end, and that it just takes time. It takes us to commit to really moving through our feelings, making space for that self-care, right? And really slowing down, as you say, is a really big part of it. And that really opens us up to so much more, like presence and self-awareness and self-understanding. And so it's a really beautiful thing that you mentioned today, because it is really number one. It is the one thing that we really want to start with. And so I think I'm going to end our chat today on that, because I think parents will want to digest this whole conversation and just to take away, to really begin to slow down. So
Yes,
thank you so much, Jude, for this beautiful
you're
conversation.
very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. That was a fabulous conversation with Judith Dack. And some of the things that she mentioned, one of them being slowing down, and the other one being moving from being the savior as a parent to moving into that space of empowerment. Those are such key and important messages. Slowing down. So it's important right now to start thinking about setting that intention to slow down this week, to start noticing those subtleties, to start feeling and sensing what's around, to start seeing new subtle things we may have not noticed before. All of this actually leads to greater gratitude, because sometimes there's all this beauty that is right there in front of us, but we're so busy in the doing. We're so much in the go, go, go that we don't even notice. And this is why slowing down is such a beautiful practice, because it will also open you up to start seeing all of these beautiful subtleties in your child that you may have otherwise not seen. Such an important thing. And also empowers us to begin that process of self-awareness, that process of beginning that self-understanding and self-compassion. All important key concepts, in addition to being present to ourselves and connecting and attuning to ourselves, and creating that safe space within ourselves, right? That safe sanctuary that you're able to come back to when you want to regulate your inner world, to be able to better co-regulate with your child. These are all such important topics that we're going to dive into as these episodes go along. But first, I want to talk to you about next week's episode. This is going to be great. And just so you know, the way we're doing things is we're first starting with conversations about parents, moving into conversations about children. And then every third episode, I'm going to have a guest come in, a parent, someone who has been through the journey just like all of you, just like myself, someone who has moved from a space of suffering into a beautiful space of transformation, growth, and expansion, of joy, of gratitude. And my hope with these conversations is that some of you will be able to relate to some of these parents and perhaps be inspired to follow some similar paths, because each of us is going to find our own unique path. Our healing, our expansion, and our growth is our own unique path, and we're going to be drawn to different things. What worked for me may not work for you, and what worked for our next guest next week may not work for you, but it might. And so the whole point is to bring these parents on and to show you that there is another narrative. There is another way to navigate on this path, and I want to show you some real live examples of that. So I'm so excited to have this next guest join us next week. So please tune in to next week's episode, and please leave comments. Share this podcast if you felt it was helpful. You know, our goal here is to really raise awareness and start creating that change for these beautiful children. So I can't wait to see you next week. Thank you for joining us today. You've been listening to Evolving Together with Christine Labbé, beyond the diagnosis into a new realm of possibilities. Tune in every second Tuesday at 4 p.m. Pacific Time or 7 p.m. Eastern Time on Transformation Talk Radio for more insights, understanding, and expansion that empower you to support your child in a way that is aligned with their soul's potential. Your child deserves to be seen, heard, valued, and celebrated exactly as they are. Are you ready to be the change you want to see for your neurodiverse child? Take the first step towards a new future and visit www.christinelabbe.com or check out our collective site, www.evolvemovement.ca.